I've got some takeaways on No Limit versus Cash Money versus. First of all, I realized how much I miss Verzuz. I mean, that's one of the few good things that came out of a pandemic, but I miss Verzuz, just the whole platform and being able to see a lot of the legends showcase some of their best stuff. With this one in particular, this one was like 12, 13 rounds. A lot of the verses from like a few years ago went a bit deeper into like the, into the catalogs. And being that this was record label versus record label rather than artist versus artist, both sides had to leave a lot on the table, and you could only pick a certain small select group of songs for each of these labels, and I thought they did fairly well. Of course, I'm sure everybody's got their idea of what the set list should have looked like, and I do have some big things that I would have changed, and some things are just not fixable. Like, you can't bring somebody back to life. That was another one of the revelations and takeaways from this, is that a lot of people passed away, man, and a lot of people got locked up. It was good to see BG out there, with Juvenile, with Baby and Mannie Fresh and so forth, but Mystikal was obviously absent. He's been locked up. He's facing like life in prison right now. And remember, he had that like several year incarceration way before that. Like, Mystikal's just been in all kinds of trouble over the past 20 years or so, but he was pretty key to No Limit when he got signed around 97 when he had the Unpredictable album. I remember liking the Mind of Mystikal a couple years before that. That was before No Limit or Cash Money blew up. So when Mystikal got signed to No Limit, you're like, oh, Mystikal, I remember him with the songs Beware and Y'all Ain't Ready Yet, but he dropped Unpredictable and one or two others with No Limit before going on to the Shake Your Ass phase of his career, his most commercially successful part of his career. But like, Make Him Say isn't the same without Mystikal. He had the fifth and final verse, and it was like the most electrifying verse on that song. And then with No Limit, you also had Magic, who had passed away, and Magic had this one verse on a later on True. True is the trio of the brothers Master P, Silkk the Shocker, and C Murder. It wasn't true to the game, but their album after that, like around 2000, they had a song that went like, I'm a soldier till the day that I die. And Magic and this dude named Dig was one of the No Limit artists at that time. Dig had the first verse, and I think Magic had the second. So Magic had that verse. He also had that second verse on Down for My Ends, which at the end, they brought out Snoop and they did the Snoop verse. C Murder's obviously been incarcerated for the last 20 plus years. So on one of No Limit's most significant songs, the first verse was done by somebody who's now incarcerated. The artist behind the second verse, Magic, rest in peace, passed away, but you had Snoop doing the third verse. Also on the Cash Money side, since you didn't have Lil Wayne's participation, you had basically like a legend just left off. I mean, it's a no-brainer if you're allowed to include Lil Wayne, and then even his signees like Thank Me Later was on Cash Money technically. So they could have gone that route, but not only did they not have Drake and Nicki, but they didn't have Lil Wayne's, one of the original Hot Boys, participation. So when they played a Millie, they were basically just standing around, and Lil Wayne wasn't there to do his verse on the great A Millie, which again, there are tons of Lil Wayne songs that could have been a part of this. Shoot, there are tons of songs from 400 Degreez that could have been a part of this. They didn't play the lead single. That's you in that badass Benz, huh? That's you who can't keep an old lady because you keep in her friends, huh? You gotta go to court, huh? You got served a subpoena for child support, huh? That was that nerve, huh? Like, they didn't play Paper Chase, You Got Your Right. They didn't play that single. That was a single before Follow Me Now, Come On, and then back that thing up, back that A up from 400 Degreez. But yeah, you could nitpick each side. Now, No Limit came before Cash Money in terms of who blew up first. And if you look at their styles, like the styles of production on No Limit, you had Beats by the Pound. That was KLC, Moby Dick, Craig B. KLC, by the way, was the DJ on the No Limit side. Carlos Stevens, Odell, that was pretty much the in-house No Limit production team. But because No Limit preceded Cash Money, when they were getting off the ground, Master P was in Richmond, California, in East Bay, California. So his mid-90s sound sounds more Bay Area than it does Southern hip hop in a lot of ways. And if you look at a lot of his collaborations on Southside Riders and these different compilations that No Limit and Master P would be a part of in the I'm talking before 98, I'm talking 95, 96, 97. You look at the artists involved, it's a lot of Bay Area rappers. That's where Master P was getting his grind on. And his sound at the time, like you listen to Ice Cream Man, kind of reflect that. I mean, it's a mix. Like you listen to Bout It, that beat, it's got some southernness and it's got some West Coast. That synth is pretty common between, I mean, Texas has it, you know, LA has it. And that was always one of my favorite No Limit songs. They actually opened up to No Limit Soulja, I Thought I Told You from True to the Game, 97, the True album. And I also like the song on the album that came right after that, Gangsters Make the World Go Round. Gangsters Make the World Go Round. I know. That's a really good album, by the way. But from that album, they played the track 2. It was a double CD. They played the track 2 from disc 1, No Limit Soldiers, and they played Free Codes featuring Mia X, who was one of the standouts, by the way. Like, let's talk about who was actually really representing and kind of holding it down. I thought that some of the best performers were Juvenile, who he had to bear a lot of responsibility and have a lot on his shoulders on the Cash Money side, because again, you didn't have Lil Wayne, you didn't have Turk, you had BG, but was he really in fighter shape, if you know what I mean, lyrically and I mean performance wise? He was doing his thing, like when he did Cash Money as an army, a Navy, like it was all right, but he didn't seem like he is really like on top of his performance game like that. Juvenile, on the other hand, he was entertaining. He was performing his butt off. Like he was pretty much like the central nervous system, you know, in terms of the operations on the Cash Money side. I mean, Baby, Beatrice, you know, Birdman was obviously like, he was very boisterous personality wise. He was talking more trash though than kicking actual bars, even though him and, you know, the big timers, him and producer Mannie Fresh, they did have a lot of work, a lot of songs featured on this Verzuz. And I mean, if you think about it, between, you know, the Hot Boys, Big Tymers, Birdman's solo album, his first solo album, and obviously, you know, Juvenile, BG and stuff, they've got a lot of like bags that they could choose from. And even post Juvenile, which I remember when Juvenile left Cash Money, how disappointed I was, because they had a good thing going. I loved that Hot Boys album, Guerrilla Warfare, but even post Juvenile, Cash Money went on. I mean, this is before Drake too, and before Lil Wayne like blew up. I would say the big turning point in Lil Wayne's career was really between 500 Degreez and the Carter 1. By the time you get to the Carter 2, you see that Lil Wayne's a different beast than he was on those first couple solo albums. Even if you like those solo albums, he just got way more developed lyrically over time. But even before that, you know, Number One Stunner, before Stuntin' Like My Daddy, I'm talking about Big Tymers albums like I Got That Work. That came around the same time as that Guerrilla Warfare album from the Hot Boys. Both really good albums. But yeah, you got so many different bags you could choose from. But again, with No Limit, you could go even further back into Ice Cream Man from 96 and True to the Game 97. Like, you could go earlier in No Limit's catalog than Cash Money, because if you look at the early Cash Money stuff, unless you're like a hardcore Cash Money fan, you didn't do that much homework where you got into like Juvenile, Soulja Rags, or, you know, Lil Wayne was first featured, as far as I know, on the BGs. It was a 2-person group. It was just him and BG, and BG was like the main guy. Lil Wayne was kind of like the little homie on the track. But that was the earliest I could hear Lil Wayne on Cash Money albums. And that was, I believe, before they even signed Juvenile. So that was before Soulja Rags, which I always thought was a little bit underrated. I actually like that pre 400 Degreez Juvenile album a lot, but you can't really bring those out in a Verzuz because nobody knows those songs. Whereas Ice Cream Man and True to the Game, you've got enough of a fan base that remembers that from 96, 97, like when No Limit was first really blowing up. Like the turning point for No Limit, as I saw it, was even a little bit after True to the Game, same year really, but Ghetto Dope, aka Ghetto D, that was like the Master P kind of breakout album. Even if to a lesser degree, you could say the same thing about Ice Cream Man, but it was Ghetto D that really got him into the mainstream. That's the one that had Make Him Say as like the second or third single. And once that dropped, then, I mean, I subscribed to the Source magazine around that time. I had been subscribing for a couple years, but every Source magazine, you had several different advertisements for the next No Limit album, because they were just dropping what seemed to be like every couple of like months, if not every month. You had like Cain and Abel, Mr. Servon, Skullduggery, Magic. Me and my brother, we were buying a lot of these albums. They would always have like kind of colorful CD cases where like the margin might be blue, it might be green, orange, depending on the album. You had C Murder's Life and Death, or Life or Death, one or the other. By the way, Down for My Ends from Snoop's No Limit Top Dog, that's one of my favorite No Limit songs. A lot of people's favorite, right? But there's a C Murder song that you couldn't feature because rest in peace Pimp C and C Murder being incarcerated. You couldn't play that one, but it was called A Kick Dough from that C Murder album, Life and Death or Life or Death. I forgot which one of those two titles it was, but the song was A Kick Dough. And Pimp C's opening verse is just flat out nasty. It's just a brilliant verse, and it's just riveting. It's something that you just have to turn up, and then you've got Bun B and C Murder on it. But yeah, that's one of my favorite No Limit songs. But around that time, they were just dropping album after album. Mia X, I mean, you had so many different artists on that label. It was just a well-oiled machine. And some of these albums like Silkk the Shocker's Charge It to the Game would go like platinum and have like multiple singles, music videos. Like they were just cranking and cranking in 97, 98, 99 and stuff, and into the 2000s really. But once 98, 99 hit and you had 400 Degreez, from 400 Degreez onward, the baton, you can't even say it was a passed baton. It was just that Cash Money got so hot a couple years after No Limit got hot that they had so much runway because they had this new fresh group of artists, you know, from Juvenile to BG, and then Turk had his album Young and Thuggin', and you know, Lil Wayne had The Block Is Hot and then Lights Out, and you know, the rest is history with the Cash Money story. Again, I was upset when Juvenile left the label, and then he dropped Slow Motion, I think after he left Cash Money, even though they featured it on this. Was he still on Cash Money when he dropped Slow Motion with Soulja Slim, rest in peace? But yeah, there's really a lot to unpack. I mean, no, these crews weren't in their prime, but I would say that some of these artists really came out and showed out and performed well. By the way, Snoop Dogg, you know, when he executed his verse, brilliant, just clean, like it was just crystal clear as only Snoop can do, just flawless delivery, like always. You have to say that about Snoop. Like as a live performer, people talk about his simplicity in his lyrics, but when it comes to sharpness, smoothness, and he could just go off the top, like no problem. Like Snoop is like grade A plus level. I mean, he's Snoop Dogg for a reason, and he just had a one-shot kill with this verse that he spit in this versus battle. It was just arguably the most flawlessly handled verse in the whole verses. So the top performers for me, Master P, he just had that energy. He's always just, you know, fatigued out, just kind of like doing his like little running in place, like no limit soldiers. He always just has that, you know, that energy. Plus, like the No Limit crew compared to Cash Money, they're a lot bigger than them, just in terms of being able to look physically imposing. Like Master P's tried out for, you know, professional basketball teams, and I think like Silkk the Shocker is a little bit taller than him, you know. So No Limit, some big dudes, whereas, you know, Mannie Fresh, Birdman, not so much, right? So Master P comes out there with his big self. He just like kind of like running around. He's got everybody around him kind of doing the same thing. I mean, it's a very No Limit, you know, here comes the tank thing. And Master P handled that well. And you could hear his voice resonate. You could hear him rapping his songs with charisma, from Bout It to Ice Cream Man to, they had another early Ice Cream Man song that I think featured UGK. Oh, it was a Master P's Break You Off Something, an early cut. I'm talking 96. That was like the second song they did after No Limit Soldiers. But yeah, Master P held it down. Juvenile definitely held it down. Mia X held it down. Fiend came out. Mac came out. That was another one of the No Limit artists doing I Could Tell That You Really Wanna. They also did that. I remember that single by Young Bleed, who I don't think was there. How you do that there? East Coast, West Coast, we don't care. They got me hollering. How you do that there? That was a really good No Limit track, but that was by Young Bleed from his, I think it was 97 too. My Balls and My Word. That was the Young Bleed album that song was from. But yeah, let me know if he was there and I just didn't see him, but I don't think he was performing in that verses. You had Silkk the Shocker with his, if there was, they have so many memes. I mean, even back then, I mean, I bought the Charge It to the Game album, and I, you know, bought the True albums, you know, that he's all over. 504 Boys, he's in that too. But he's always been so offbeat that his verses, I mean, I'll say this, there's nobody else in the rap game ever that sounds and raps like Silkk the Shocker, for better or worse. Like, even the songs that seem like they're giving him like an alley-oop to just dunk it, he has to make it sound like a Silkk the Shocker verse. Like, he couldn't even like really keep up with his original like cadence in the verses that he was executing, because they would be playing the track in the background, and so he'd be rapping on top of that. So you've got these two kind of spastic flows that are conflicting with one another. There's the one that's playing on the actual track, and then there's whatever Silkk the Shocker's doing on stage, and they both are rapping like Silkk the Shocker, so it's a little bit chaotic. But yeah, he had a few moments. He did his song It Ain't My Fault. That was featuring Mystikal, at least on the remix. Did I do that? And one thing about, you know, a rap track playing in the background, I thought when Juvenile came out to his the title track, the 400 Degreez, the You Don't Want To, which was a pretty cool one to open up to. It's not one of their most famous tracks, but if you were a fan of the album 400 Degreez, then a lot of the 400 Degreez album cuts, like for me, My Nine Is Gonna Ride With Me, that was my favorite, and Ghetto Children, they had a lot of good ones. But 400 Degreez, if you were into that album, you would have appreciated Juvenile opening up this whole Cash Money side of the Verzuz battle with 400 Degreez. But when he was rapping, I thought that was the rap track, like the song playing. He sounded so clear and so good and so like Juvenile. Like, he doesn't sound like his voice is no longer formidable. You can't say that about all rappers who've been in the game for that long. Juvenile, I thought, sounded really good. And again, I think he pretty much led the charge for Cash Money. He had, I think, the most verses by far, the most songs played, appearances, and just he had to do the most work. And he was as engaged as anyone up on that stage. He was, again, a performer, an entertainer. I've been a Juvenile fan for decades. I didn't know that he would still be able to hold it down to that level on that type of a stage where you've got a lot of different participants and players. No, Juvenile for me was a big standout. Like, they had less of a cast, I think, of characters to kind of bring out there on the Cash Money side. You had Juvenile, you had Mannie Fresh, Birdman, BG, and damn, was that it? Whereas on No Limit, you had not nearly the whole roster, but you had a lot more No Limit soldiers that you could throw out there onto the field than you did on the Cash Money side. So again, and on the Cash Money side, Juvenile just killed it. Mannie Fresh, always entertaining. He's just like a life of the party type of character. You know, he does his thing. He's got his raunchy lyrics. He's got his beats, which are very Mannie Fresh, distinct signature sounding beats. Whereas again, on the No Limit side, you had some beats that sound like they're from the Bay Area, sound like they're from the West Coast. Then you had other stuff that started sounding a little bit more Southern. Like, by the time No Limit was in their phase where they had Choppa with the song Choppa Style, Choppa Style sounds like a Cash Money song. That doesn't even really sound like a No Limit song. But yeah, I thought this was pretty good. Like, I mean, for what it was, I thought that, you know, they brought it. Again, I want to, you know, shout out to Mia X and how good she sounded. Mia X, I thought, was a top 5 performer out there. And I kind of want them to run it back. Like, again, they didn't even really get into Lil Wayne. They played a Millie, just the track, but they didn't. I mean, he's got his own massive catalog, which again almost makes it an unfair fight because he's one of the GOATs, you know what I'm saying, in rap history. It kind of becomes a flawless victory damn near if you are allowed to take from the Lil Wayne catalog, and obviously Drake and Nicki Minaj. It just gets really ugly. But you know, on the No Limit side, if they would be so inclined, you know, Snoop had 3 really good albums. Well, I like 2 out of the 3 a lot, but I'll give him the first one too. I mean, a lot of people do like that album. I thought that his albums started to sound less and less No Limit-ish. You look at the list of producers from The Game Is to Be Sold, Not to Be Told, and then No Limit Top Dog, and then The Last Meal. It got more and more West Coast sounding and less Beats by the Pound sounding. But you do have songs from those albums outside of Down for My Ends that you could have put out here. So I would like to see them run it back and maybe do more Lil Wayne and do more Snoop. And if, you know, Cash Money could get back in good graces and with Turk and vice versa, if they could work out their stuff, you could include Turk. I'm not expecting Mystikal or C Murder to get out anytime soon, just based on what I've read about their, you know, their cases and their convictions and stuff. But you can't extend this. Like, again, there were a lot of things on True to the Game, on the Crime Family. That's that next True album, I think from like 99. You had a lot of No Limit stuff that you could go through. They didn't play I Miss My Homies by Master P. They didn't play If I Could Change with Master P and Steady Mobbin'. That was on the, was it on the I Got the Hookup soundtrack? That's another thing about No Limit and Cash Money. They did films. You know, Master P did I Got the Hookup, had a soundtrack. I mean, these guys were so prolific, putting out so much stuff in the late 90s. I cannot overstate that. But again, I like this battle. Let me know your thoughts. What would you have liked to have seen differently? Again, I kind of hope they run it back, but I like what we got here. You know, again, based on who was available, who was participating, it was pretty damn good. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you love hip hop like I do. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you for watching this music monologue. We're gonna go through the history, past and present, talking everything from Marvin to Lennon, Aretha to Led Zeppelin. And if you think your musical knowledge has grown through engaging with the channel, then please like, subscribe, and give me your 2 favorite genres. And check out one of these other videos if they catch your interest. I'm Woog, thanks for tuning in.